Last week we installed the steering column from eBay in our F100 project, and between then and now I've gone ahead and put the stalks on it and the shift indicator. Also, I went ahead and mounted up this shift linkage assembly and did all its adjusting properly according to, I think that was from I Did It? Yeah, that's right. And now I kind of see why there's a lot of complaints about how the indicator doesn't line up properly. What you'll see is I've gone ahead and installed the one that just is for like a 3-speed transmission. It did come with this one for 4 speeds, but what we run into is there's not enough distance in this lens for how much travel there is in this shifter to go down. So if you kind of see, it starts flexing because it's out of space there, and then it's touching this side when you go to put it in park. Also, I might want to point out that I think they hired that Barney guy from The Simpsons to paint that D. My thought is this could be fixed. The instructions from I Did It tell you to cut down this bracket to where it's exactly 2 inches from center of where the shifter cable mount is to where the steering shaft is. Now, if that bracket was a little longer, that would create more travel on the cable for the same amount of distance travel on the shifter itself on the column. In essence, it would repair that problem with where the indicator is. So I'm not saying that's an I Did It problem, because theirs is pretty universal, but it would be a way of compensating for this. Oh yeah, almost forgot. This happened. These are the American Racing VN510 Drafts. You just gotta hog the show. These are 18 by 8 inch in the front with 0 offset, and 18 by 10 in the rear. And the only way to get these with this bolt pattern that we're using is with a plus 12 millimeter offset. These are 275/40 18s in the rear, and we're running 245/45 18s in the front, which make these tires overall the same height front to rear. It gives me a little more sidewall for ride, and these are supposed to be extremely quiet as well. Good traction, good tread wear. Again, it's not a drag truck, so putting a bunch of high performance noisy tires on here doesn't make a lot of sense. These wheels came from Will411. You can check out his website. He's on Facebook as well. And Steven is an awesome, awesome guy to work with. And he can ship directly to your house if that's what you need. So reach out to him if you're in the market for wheels. He can mount tires up too if you need that handled all in one shop. So tell him Grease Monkey TV sent you, and see what he can take care of for you. He was kind enough to drop ship the wheels directly to us here, and then my local tire shop kind of owed me a favor, so I needed to buy tires from them anyway in order to gain that back. So I hauled them to them. They got it fixed up with these Goodyears, and we're all set. But this week's goal is to get our master cylinder and brake pedal mounted. Now, I'm not saying we'll get all the brake lines ran, or we might, I don't know. What we have on the workbench today is 3 different part numbers from Wilwood. This is the, I think the 7-to-1 throw brake pedal assembly. Yeah, so it comes with what you see here. This part number is basically the adapter kit that allows you to bolt their master cylinder into their brake pedal assembly, which it's kind of odd that they mounted the screws like vertically on the brake pedal and then horizontally on their master cylinder. So now you get to spend another, I forget what it was, 30, 40, 50 bucks or something to use this to bolt here and then those through that. And it comes with all the hardware, adjustable piston, the boot that will go in your firewall, and these 2 different looks like brackets depending on which one of these brake pedal assemblies you have, either the thin one or the wide one. Then this is the master cylinder assembly. Now they make a newer one that's a little smaller than this. It's considerably more expensive, and it's exactly the same thing. This is the tandem 1 1/8 inch. Now before you go to order one, I can't stress enough, you can call Wilwood and talk to their tech line. They're going to need to know the diameter of your pistons on like your disc brakes and how many there are, and then as well as what you've got going on your rear brakes. And they'll size these master cylinders accordingly with the correct pedal. Because again, we're not going to go with power brakes. These are going to be full manual, which from what I understand, it should work just fine. All the race cars out there and everything use them. And if you ever go boost and you eliminate the vacuum that you have in your intake, brake booster's not going to work as well anyway. Now you're going to have to come up with an alternative source for that vacuum, whether it be Hydro Boost or something else. It just gets messy. So why get ourselves involved in that to begin with? There is a left and a right option, which the master cylinder is the same. So is the proportioning valve, because it's labeled on both sides. The difference is going to be which of these brackets they send you and these hard lines. So you can mount this on the other side of the master cylinder. If you have a different amount of space on your firewall, if you've got other stuff going on and you can't have that on the left side, maybe you want it over to the right. The master cylinder also comes with the bleeder kit, which if you don't know, you really need to hand bleed these before you hook them up to your brake line, or you'll fight having air in this piston for quite some time. So essentially you bench bleed these before you install them into your vehicle. Right, now we're going to get our bracket attached to our brake pedal assembly, and we removed these studs earlier, which made it much easier to do our fit up, and they had to be removed anyway because we're going to bolt this plate here where it has this countersunk holes, and then we're going to use the hardware that came with the adapter kit to fasten this to the brake pedal. The push rod that comes with our adapter kit doesn't fit into the bracket that came on this brake pedal assembly, so we're gonna have to change it out to this larger one because it's the only one it'll thread into. Also wanted to point out, the hole inside this adapter is not large enough for either one of the, like the new boot will slide in it, but it won't attach to the master cylinder because it's just too thick. And they didn't relieve any space, so I'm just not really sure what the plan was here to still run a boot. So I guess once it's installed in our truck, we'll try to pin it up in here the best we can, just to keep some of the dust out of that piston, even though it'll only be exposed to the interior of our truck. The bolts that come with this adapter kit are just too short. They have to go through this bracket, through the firewall, into the master cylinder assembly. Then this spacer has to be here for the bracket for the proportioning valve. We haven't even gone through the firewall yet, but that doesn't leave enough space on that hardware to fasten it, especially not even into the nylon locking area on this nut. We're going to end up providing our own bolts, which is frustrating because this is the hardware they sell with this kit. Because it's lucky I have a 75-inch wingspan, so I can thread this in place, maybe still reach inside and get hardware on it. If there's one thing that Wilwood's instructions are clear about, it's that they want this master cylinder piston to bottom out before the pedal runs out of travel, including carpet, insulation, etc. So this rod is only threaded into this bracket by, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 threads. You can see there's a little bit of play still because it's not threaded in there very deep. But when I press the pedal, it essentially makes contact with the firewall before I feel it bottom out in the master cylinder, which is odd to me because this thing even has this spacer bracket on the inside of the firewall. So technically, the brake pedal arm is crossing the plane of the front side of this bracket before it bottoms out. So it tells me they probably are sending too short of a rod for this, just like they were sending too short of bolts for the mounting. So I called Wilwood because this is clearly a muddy area. Tech support told me not to worry about how much travel that push rod has with no fluid in the system, that you're probably not going to bottom it out anyway. I also mentioned that the 2 bolts that hold this whole assembly together are too short. And he says it's kind of a unique situation that I'm doing, and that's why those bolts aren't made to reach that far. But you have to have that bracket kit to put that brake pedal and that master cylinder together at all. And it's recommended from their tech line. He says I may have to buy or find a longer piston rod or modify to make mine longer. But I guess we'll wait until it's all assembled and we're bleeding it to know whether or not this is an emergency. And I can always put a longer push rod in there later or cut it and extend it. All right, so we might as well keep moving forward on this portion of the install, which is the front side of the firewall. I'm going to thread these in. Also, I will say I did tighten all these 2 fittings and the 2 block offs on the other side with the crush washers that the kit comes with. Essentially what we're doing is test fitting these parts and these brake lines that are already pre-bent to make sure everything lines up and is good to go. We will have to take these back off to bench bleed this master cylinder. Typically you would do this in a vise or a bench, but since I've got it perfectly level, I can reach in there with the foot pedal and pump it while I circulate and bleed these lines out and into the reservoir. Alright, so we've got our rear brake line ran. Got a few of these little standoffs along the way inside the frame rail. And it's ran up the front of our firewall here You guys may remember in a couple of videos back we mentioned this residual pressure valve because it does need to maintain pressure for the rear drum brakes, and that's supposed to be mounted up close to the master cylinder, which I kind of wish I could have ran some sort of a single fitting that would have just fastened this directly into it without making this little line, but oh well. So this is bent and ran and fastened in, so the rear brakes are completely finished. Now we need to run a line from both front discs up to these two outputs for front brakes. This is our last fitting in the whole brake system on this truck. Kind of the pro tip was to work from our back forward so we don't have these lines in our way. I would want to point out for those that may ask, you see in the factory brake lines, there'll be like a coil here or some kind of bend. And basically what that's doing is giving like a shock absorber to give a little flex between the chassis and the body, which this is mounted to the body, because you don't want these hard lines to eventually crack or cause leaks at the fittings. But since we have multiple bends between where they're fastened, these lines have some room to flex up and down, and I think it's going to work out just fine for this application. So this is my own OCD, but these lines are parallel with each other, and then we make these bends to where it's parallel here as well, and one on top of the other until this curves out and then makes that turn down into this left front brake, and then of course that goes across the cross member to the other side. Now I just need to get some help out here so we can bleed these things and call the brakes completely finished. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this and maybe learned that it's not that scary to build your own brake lines, and it's really not that expensive either. But thanks for watching. I've rambled on long enough. We'll see you guys next week.